Hello and welcome. My name is Victoria and I'm an international trade and customs consultant. On this channel, I discuss topics related to international trade and movement of goods across borders. And today I want to discuss a topic that I believe is quite important and it merits quite a lot of attention and consideration, even if it is not at the top of the strategic planning agenda of any given business. However, it has the potential to either assist the business in its good performance or make crucial mistakes that will cost a business its existence. Today I want to talk about how to choose the right freight forwarding company for your business. While it is impossible to predict exactly how a transportation company will act in the future and whether they will be a good asset to your business or not, there are specific tips that I've acquired throughout my career that I believe is important to share with you, just so you are aware of the green flags as well as the red flags, and something to watch out for and as well as to look for. One of the main reasons why I wanted to do this video is because I have seen time and time again freight forwarding companies making mistakes, whether that was because of a human error, because definitely they deal with a huge volume of parcels on a daily basis, and there's a lot going on with these companies. There's a lot of planning that goes into the transportation and communication with the customs authorities through their software. Nevertheless, it must be mentioned that these companies are prone to mistakes. It is also important that should you choose to work with a transportation company and outsource your customs brokerage function to a third-party logistics provider, that mistakes will inevitably occur. I have never worked with a business that have not at some point or another found some mistakes in their record keeping. This is completely impossible. I mean, obviously now with us entering into the AI age, it is very possible that less and less mistakes will be made because AI has the potential to flag those. But until we get there, it is quite likely that we are dealing with the human error aspect of import declaration. Time and time again, I have also seen freight forwarding companies advise my clients wrong. What I have noticed quite consistently is that the freight forwarder's objective is to get goods from point A to point B. And even if they are not entirely aware of the legal procedures that are involved in this A to B trajectory, they will very often rely on their practical experience of getting goods transported from one country to another. They will very often rely on their experience in how borders are crossed. They will very often consider the fact that goods are not in their majority physically checked and they are simply declared through a software to the customs authorities. And so they will rely on their practical knowledge to essentially let you know how things are done when goods cross the borders and how goods are declared to customs. And they will not think long term to be able to advise you that maybe certain processes, even if easier in that particular moment, can lead to a penalty in the future. I believe that it's important that I share some practical examples with you of what I have observed over the years. I have seen, for instance, a freight forwarding company giving wrong advice to a client of mine that was importing a car from the European Union to the UK for repair. And in order to make sure that no duties were due on that car, even though the car had been initially transported from UK to the EU for personal use, they have advised to use origin information and declare that car as if having EU origin when that was not the case, just in order to avoid customs duties. That is a very serious mistake that cost my client eventually thousands, because we did try to amend the customs declaration. We did try to implement a retrospective inward processing relief procedure, but that was just not possible. And in essence, had they planned ahead, they would not be liable for those customs duties. I have also seen clients being advised wrong about the use of different procedures like postponed VAT accounting, like temporary imports, like classification is a very common one where you deal, for example, with a big transportation company where you have to input details regarding your goods and they give you very limited option regarding classification, and then it turns out the classification was actually wrong. I have also seen clients of mine attempting to get copies of import and export declarations from the freight forwarders, but freight forwarders refusing to share those because they either weren't kept properly or because this would imply quite a lot of work on the part of the freight forwarding company. I have seen quite a lot of situations where freight forwarding companies did not necessarily behave in the most collaborative manner and did not cooperate where it came to correction of certain mistakes as well. I have seen freight forwarding companies not responding to emails. I have seen freight forwarding companies refusing cooperation where it came to mistakes that they themselves have committed. But I have also seen freight forwarding companies that were extremely collaborative and at all times try to perform to the best of their ability and give the best service possible. What I want to stress here is there are different freight forwarding companies out there, and you as a starting business, a business that wishes to change their freight forwarding company, or a business that is expanding its range of activities and requires a different third-party logistics provider, you need to understand that there are different types of services being offered out there. Human error will always be present. It's impossible to guarantee that no mistakes will ever be made, but at least you can be aware of an average behavior of a freight forwarder slash customs agent. It's important to know that lately a lot of freight forwarding companies slash customs agents offer consultancy service as well. And so when you hire a transportation company, they will often have a specialist on site that can advise about the particulars of an import or an export operation. But of course, you need to pay for those services, and of course, it makes it more expensive overall. Not to mention that obviously you need to pay for the declaration fees, you need to pay for the transportation, you need to pay for handling fees, and so by the end, it may actually come to cost you quite a bit just to make sure that that one shipment is correct. It very much depends on your business, which type of freight forwarding company you would choose. I tend to advise businesses to pick a less commercial transportation business. I have seen a trend lately for transportation companies that focus specifically on a particular niche sector, whether it be steel, whether it be furniture, whether it be textiles, but they focus only exclusively on that particular niche sector, industrial sector, and they will pick only the customers that they're comfortable dealing with. They will have a limited number of customers that they can rely on, and vice versa in the long run, rather than having those businesses work with them on just a one-off basis. It's also important to mention that anytime you're looking for a transportation company, they will look at your type of establishment. Where it comes to customs brokerage and customs agents, there are different types of representation they offer, because essentially they act on your behalf. They will input their own details into the import declaration just to let the customs authorities know that they're being represented by a customs agent. There are different types of representation, that is direct and indirect representation. Direct representation is mostly available for companies that are established in the country of export or import, and so the liability also falls entirely on the importer, which in this case would be the business that is established in that country, and the customs agent acts exclusively as like a helper that fills in the details on behalf of the business. But mind you, the actual legal liability of any incorrect filing of the import declaration will fall on the importer rather than the actual customs representative. There is also indirect representation that is intended for businesses that are not established in the country of import or export. So direct representation involves an agent acting in the name of and on behalf of the importer, who remains fully liable, as I've already mentioned, and indirect representation involves an agent acting in their own name but on behalf of the importer, sharing liability. When Brexit happened, for example, and a lot of UK established businesses or EU established businesses wanted to import into the opposite territory, they had to hire indirect representation because the customs authorities in the country of import or export would need to have some kind of a security to guarantee that in case there are any mistakes made, in case there's a higher duty liability for a particular shipment, that they can contact a particular legal person, such as a customs agent, to respond on behalf of the persons that they were importing or exporting goods of. Not many freight forwarding companies want to act as indirect representatives because, for the most part, they try to get away from assuming any type of liability. And so, if they are assuming the liability, they will generally ask you a lot of different questions with regards to the nature of your goods, with regards to your finances, just to make sure that the business is solvent. They will make you sign a contract of liability where they can tell you that even though they will be acting as indirect representative, should any of the issues transpire, should there be any litigation involved, for example, they will not be taking any responsibility, and you as a business will be required to sign those documents just to make sure that your goods can get from point A to point B. Not to mention the fact that indirect representation obviously costs more. It requires some extra effort on the part of the freight forwarding companies to discern from a financially solvent and not financially solvent company. They will potentially ask for your banking statements just to make sure that you have some monies on your bank account. They could even ask you for a deposit just to make sure that in case there are any mistakes, that they have some shield just to make sure that in case there's any liability, it will be placed on the importer, which is you. If your business is dealing with a procedure that is slightly complex and requires, for example, implementation of specific procedure, like returned goods relief, for example. Imagine you're returning goods and you need specific type of documentation and you need specific customs procedure codes to be input in the import declaration. You need to inform your freight forwarding company and the respective customs agents you're in contact with of these circumstances. It is very important that you give your freight forwarding company exact instructions on what you want from them and how you want the goods to either be exported and imported. So generally it is advised that you provide those in writing and that you confirm with them exactly what you need, because it is very often that they will receive the instruction but they will not pass it on to the correct customs agent that is responsible for your account in a particular moment. And so regardless of whether you've given them instructions or not, they may still not use them. So you need to, as a business, take full responsibility for the fact that you want to declare goods in a very specific way, that you inform the freight forwarder of this, and in case they make the mistake of not declaring the goods in the way that you need them to, that the company you work with ends up being liable for it. In that case, we generally advise to either have a contract in place with the freight forwarding company where all of these different points and responsibilities are discussed, what they are mentioned, and the freight forwarding company must take liability for any mistakes made by them. It is extremely important that you make sure that you have that document on your hands. Generally, a slightly bigger company will on their own send you a power of attorney where you give them authorization to act on your behalf, and that power of attorney often already has a list of specific conditions under which your collaboration will be tackled. Mind you, though, that these powers of attorney that generally are sent to you by the freight forwarding companies, they will limit the liability of the company itself while imposing the majority of liability onto you. And you need to make sure that if you are unhappy with the conditions listed in that power of attorney, that you inform the freight forwarding company that you would like to add a few points and you need them to sign it. And you need to obtain, obviously, any supporting documentation related to either their passport details, either the director's signature and passport details, as well as the address, etc. You need proof, you need all of it in writing, and you need to be able to call the freight forwarding company out for their mistakes. Sometimes it's better to slightly overpay, so long as you are able to speak with the real person. If you deal with companies like DHL, FedEx, UPS, it is very often quite hard to get access to an actual person rather than chatting to a bot online, attempting to understand what has gone wrong with your shipment. If it's delayed, if there is some kind of an error that has been signaled on the border. And so it is very important that you get that if you're a business dealing with a shipping transportation company, that you get a person assigned to your account and you're able to contact them, inquire them about specific doubts, any questions you may have, etc., etc. And if you're the kind of business that is growing and you don't wish to outsource the customs brokerage function to somebody else, and you simply want a transportation company to take your goods from point A to point B, and you wish to take care of the customs declaration part yourself, just to have control over that process, just to make sure that you have all of the details correct, that you input all of the details that you believe are correct, you can also do that. And there are plenty of softwares being sold out there. There's also 24-hour support very often for these softwares. And so as a business, it is possible that you implement that function yourself and you don't have to pay up to, I don't know, 60 pounds, 60 euro per import-export declaration just to have a customs broker input just a few details about the product you are wishing to import or export. To sum up, plan in advance and get specialist advice where possible. Pick a freight forwarder / customs agent that seems most able to deal with your business needs. Ensure you get assigned a real person to discuss the particulars of your transport circumstances. Ensure you sign a contract and/or power of attorney listing roles and responsibilities of each party. Request the import/export documentation be shared with you. Keep customs records for at least 4 years. If you have any customs related query, please do not hesitate in contacting me. I will leave the relevant details just below the video. Thank you for watching and see you next time.